Hey there, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we have a great one for you. A Houston Texans NFL mock draft, full 7 rounds. The Houston Texans have a lot of promise heading into the offseason. There's a lot of question marks, though. This team was mildly competitive down the stretch of the season, had some really close games with some actual true contenders. They're starting to get there. You're starting to see the progress with this team, but the big question mark remains at the quarterback position. How is Nick Cassario going to address this? How is he going to supplement that talent into this roster that desperately needs it? Let's go ahead and jump in. Let's see what we can try to do. So at number 2, you have our selection. Number 1 goes Will Anderson, as should be predicted. I think Will Anderson will be the first overall pick. And you're sitting here as Houston with a big looming decision. Nick Cassario has to look at this logically and think who can be the true catalyst for improving this roster, a guy that can be a true long-term franchise quarterback. Now you have a couple that are blatantly obvious that stand out. Bryce Young, with his pedigree and how great he was at Alabama, CJ Stroud, and Anthony Richardson. Will Levis is one that I don't know is necessarily in play here, but could be when you look at his actual physicals and what he's able to do potentially in the future. It makes sense for consideration. However, I think they are probably going to go in a different direction. In my opinion, they're probably going to lean Bryce Young. Obviously, the measurables don't shout his name, right? This is not somebody that you're taking for physical stature and all of those kind of things. But what you are getting is a quarterback that is extremely accurate, extremely poised, a guy that can hang around in the pocket and extend plays as well. Bryce Young is a terrific prospect. We've been shouting that to the rooftops for this past season. To me, it makes a lot of sense from a perspective on the outside to say, yes, Bryce Young should probably be the pick. Now, some people aren't going to like that. People are going to disagree with this selection, but I think this is where they're going to go. All of this is in my idea of where this team will go. I think they're going to lean Bryce Young in that pick. Now, a lot of people are going to say, but look at Anthony Richardson and what he was able to do at the combine. Yes, but I don't know if the Texans are going to overvalue that. I think they very well could just stick with the very polished product in Bryce Young. You're sitting at 12. You've made a big franchise-changing decision at quarterback. What are you going to do to follow that up? What's the next step for the Texans? In my opinion, there's one way they should really go. This team is lacking a true number 1 wide receiver. I think Brandon Cooks will be gone this offseason. I look at Nico Collins as a nice complementary wide receiver. This is a team that has to address the position. They have to get a guy that can be a 1. Now, when you look at what's currently available at the wide receiver position, there's a lot of guys that could fit in this team and would be instant upgrades for what they currently have. To me, it makes a lot of sense to consider the top 3 guys. Jordan Addison is another one that should be in consideration. However, I think it falls in between this. Zay Flowers, once again, a stature issue. However, he is such a technical route runner and so elusive that it would be hard to pass on him. However, you have another very technically sound wide receiver in Jackson Smith-Njigba, but not a super dynamic athlete in terms of his straight line speed. However, when you look at his agility, it's right up there with the top tier in terms of how he tested. Now, you also have Quentin Johnston, who is a 6'2.5" wide receiver, really good route runner. This makes sense too. So altogether, who is going to be that kind of prospect? I think they're probably going to lean, and they have more of a type in terms of looking at a bigger bodied wide receiver. Quentin Johnston, in my opinion, will be a Houston Texan. I think when you're able to keep him in state as well, that's kind of a cool story. And maybe they've had a little bit more eyes on him all season long than some of the other teams have potentially. At pick 33, we have the Houston Texans again selecting. Now, you have to kind of look at what's currently available. What do they need? Where can they go from here? I think corners in consideration. I wouldn't be surprised if they went with another wide receiver. I really wouldn't. Josh Downs is still available. Now, when you look at a guy that could be an awesome slot guy, to me, it makes some sense. I think another thing you have to consider, maybe they look at Dwan Jones, the terrific tackle from Ohio State. To me, that makes some sense. They could also look at adding some to their defense. This is kind of intriguing to me. The idea of adding an Emmanuel Forbes to this secondary makes some sense. However, I just look at this as very tough to pass up on a guy like BJ Ojulari. his production at LSU, his ability to rush the quarterback, a nice variety of pass rushing moves to throw in there. To me, BJ Ojulari is going to be the selection. Now, it was tough to do that. However, I think that the Texans have to improve on both sides of the ball, and they can't be completely stuck to one side. Now, you're left at this position where this is awesome because there are some phenomenal players still left in round 3. That's how it's going to be in the draft. You can take a look at the cornerback position. Garrett Williams, the nice lanky corner from Syracuse. You have another tall, lanky corner from Alabama in Eli Ricks, good man-to-man guy, former LSU transfer. To me, that makes some sense as well. Once again, you have to consider the center position. They need to get better up front. So there's a lot of different ways that they can go with this. To me, Nathaniel Dell needs to be on the radar. I think drafting another corner is very worthwhile. You have Jalen Petrie at safety. You have Derek Stingley at corner. This is turning into an awesome secondary, collectively speaking. To me, I think it makes sense to go with a guy like Garrett Williams. Garrett Williams, he's a true man-to-man guy. He's going to fit in very nicely with this scheme. It's going to be awesome on the other side of Derek Stingley. Garrett Williams is a true scheme fit. He's a guy that's going to work with this Houston Texans defense. He goes here at number 65. Now, the next selection, once again, you can look at a center. That has lasted to this point. They need to draft a center. It's clear and obvious. Joe Tippmann from Wisconsin, sturdy center, a guy that is super smart. He can get to the second level, win blocking. I think it makes a lot of sense when you look at his consistency on a play-to-play basis. To me, that makes sense here at 73. So Houston's already been able to do such a nice job with what they currently have, in my opinion, plus these other draft picks. And we're finally getting to round 4. Round 4, this is where some big things are going to be happening because Nathaniel Dell is still there. And it's incredible he has lasted to this point. Michael Wilson is still there. Hodges Tomlinson available as well. To me, you have to take Nathaniel Dell. Nathaniel Dell at this point in the draft, I understand you already took a receiver, but this is a receiver with a different archetype, a different body stature, a different skill set than a guy, like Quentin Johnston. To me, that was a steal. That should be an A+ on the grading system later on. And now you get to pick 178. I think tight end something that you have to consider at this juncture, right? Davis Allen from Clemson could make a lot of sense. I also want to see what else is still available at tight end. I've talked about Will Mallory in a previous video. To me, he makes some sense here. But Davis Allen from Clemson is going to be a nice depth tight end for them. I know with their current tight end room, it's going to be interesting to see how he fits in. However, I think Davis Allen could be an impact guy for this team. You look at what they've been able to do in the past. Now, they could consider, once again, Will Mallory should be a name on the radar, but to me, Davis Allen is going to be the pick. So another really good selection there for the Texans. And we get to our next selection here. And this is kind of the point in time where you have to kind of decide, what else are you looking for? You're going to maybe take some swings on some guys. I've been studying this running back, this running back class pretty in depth. I'm very deep into this. I think you can honestly get another player very, very similar to, what you have in Dameon Pierce, but you also want a guy that can offset the skill set. And I think there's a lot of guys worth considering. I've watched, I've watched, Dwayne McBride, Keaton Mitchell, Eric Ray, Chris Rodriguez. These are some running backs that can still win running back #1 jobs, in my opinion. Mo Ibrahim, with his huge historic setting season at the University of Minnesota, considered probably the best Minnesota running back in terms of what you've seen collegiately. So he's another option. So that's something you have to consider. And, we have another pick coming up. We're going to hold off on the RB spot. We have a little bit of depth there. Jared Clark on the interior. To me, you have to get better on the interior if you're the Houston Texans. Jacob Slade as well, high impact guy. We're going to go with Jacob Slade at pick 187. Following that up here, you still have the running backs available. You can get some nice depth pieces. Keaton Mitchell, awesome draft prospect. We are going to be going with him. And then once again, you have some more options. You got some optionality, in my opinion. Kind of looking around the board here. Let's see. Guys that make some sense. Man, Mohamed Diabate could make some sense. They need to add another linebacker, another depth piece. We're gonna go with Diabate. To me, that is a perfect fit as well. And what the Houston Texans, they've done really, really well for themselves. This is an awesome draft. It's hard not to get excited about what they have to offer, what they can be in the future. Phenomenal draft through and through. If you're, looking at Nick Cassario's board, and hopefully align something kind of like this, because if they're able to knock in something like this, it could be for an awesome draft. You look at the draft grades. Bryce Young, A+, Quentin Johnson, an A, BJ Ojolari at that pick, an A-. They gave Garrett Williams a B-. Kind of shocking, considering he was 49th on the big board. You get him at 65, was a player that was in consideration to be a round one guy for quite some time. Joe Tippmann. Joe Tippmann is probably one of my favorite picks in the entire draft. Nathaniel Dell, the fact that he ends up at 104 is just unbelievable. A little bit, this could happen in real life. This very well could happen where you see his slide just because of his stature and frame. Davis Allen, Jacob Slade, Keaton Mitchell, an A+ level pick. And they were not vibing with the Diabate pick in round 6. However, you supplement a lot of talent on both offense and defense. You fix the wide receiver room, which is something that's clearly obvious. You get an awesome center in Joe Tippmann, BJ Ojolari off the edge, Garrett Williams in the secondary. Houston does great in this draft. You have to give Nick Cassario a ton of credit. If he's able to put together something like this, which I think he is fully capable of doing, hit some home runs on some picks last year. I think they very well could do it again. They get their franchise quarterback. A lot to love from the Houston Texans perspective. Thanks again for stopping by. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you are new to the channel. Also, leave a like if you did enjoy today's content. We're very happy that you were able to join us in today's video. We will catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.